Ever feel like you're just drowning in news? Like you need superpowers just to keep up with what's happening.
Oh, absolutely. It's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes, isn't it? So much information flying around.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of why we're doing this. Welcome to the deep dive. We basically do the heavy lifting for you, short me noise, and try to figure out what actually matters.
And today we're digging into a whole bunch of news items that were pulled together by Consumers.app. They featured them on their commentary show, Consumers 360, back on April 15th, 2025.
That's the one. So our job today, unpack all that consumer-focused news, spot the bigger trends, and, make sense of it for you. Where should we start?
Well, there's a really fascinating one right off the bat. It's about AI being used to help protect elephants.
AI and elephants. Okay, that's not your everyday headline. How's that working?
Yeah, it's interesting. The source, Mathrubhumi English, mentions using AI to save their lives. It doesn't go into super fine detail, but you can imagine, right? Maybe using AI to monitor drone footage for poachers or tracking elephant movements to avoid conflicts with villages.
Right, predicting where problems might arise.
Exactly. It's just striking to see tech usually associated with data centers being used out in the wild like this for conservation.
Yeah, it really shows the flexibility of these tools. Okay, so shifting gears quite a bit here. There was some discussion reported by the Associated Press about RFK Jr. and measles outbreaks.
According to the AP piece on MSN.com, some health officials were criticizing statements he made.
Okay.
The core issue seems to be concerned that those kinds of statements could, potentially undermine public health messages about vaccines and preventing measles spread. It's highly contagious stuff.
Right. It highlights that tension between public figures and health advice. Okay, let's move into the money side of things. Business Today reported some good news for ICICI Prudential Life Insurance.
Yes, their stock got a boost. It was apparently thanks to their Q4 earnings coming out, and they also announced an interim dividend.
So a solid performance.
Seems like it. Good news for people holding the stock, and it signals some confidence in their financial health,
Makes sense. And sticking with finance, but broader picture, India's retail inflation, Asianet Newsable had an update.
Yeah, they reported a dip in March, down to 3.34%.
Okay, that sounds positive.
Well, mostly. Core inflation that's without food and fuel was actually at 4%, and urban inflation ticked up slightly. So it was a bit of a mixed picture, really.
Not uniform across the board, then. Interesting. Now, something completely different, Fiji Kava. The Calmer Co. product is apparently in Woolworths now.
Right. Kava, it's that root from the Pacific Islands, traditionally used for relaxation, stress relief.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it.
Seeing it in a major supermarket like Woolies suggests it's getting more mainstream, doesn't it? People looking for natural wellness options.
Definitely feels like a trend. Okay, back to personal finance solar power in Minnesota. The Star Tribune mentioned issues with their net metering system.
Yeah, apparently it's outdated. Net metering is how homeowners get credit for extra solar power they send back to the grid.
Right.
If the system doesn't properly value that energy, it kind of discourages people from investing more in solar. Even though solar use is growing there, it could slow down the clean energy shift.
So a policy thing holding back the tech adoption, potentially? Okay, let's look internationally again. The CEO of Royal Philips seems pretty upbeat about China's economy.
Yeah, China Daily reported that. He expressed confidence in its strength and future.
And why is that important for us?
Well, China's huge, right? Massive market, key part of global supply chains. If a big company like Philips feels good about China's economy, it suggests they expect continued consumer spending and activity there, which affects, pretty much everyone globally, prices, availability of goods.
It's all connected. Okay, staying with finance, but closer to home maybe for some listeners, Zipco, the buy now, pay later company.
Reuters reported they had record quarterly earnings, and they've actually raised their forecast for fiscal 2025.
Wow. So that buy now, pay later model is still going strong.
Seems like it. It's really becoming a standard way for people to manage payments,
Clearly. All right, switching lanes again, vegan Easter recipes.
Yeah, Caitlin Havener on MSN.com put together a big list, over 60 apparently. Easy, kid-friendly vegan options for Easter.
Nice resource. Shows how much more common vegan options are becoming, even for holidays.
Definitely reflects that growing interest in accessibility.
And speaking of positive signs, ManFN reported that a recent inflation report actually gave the markets a boost. Usually, inflation news makes markets nervous.
Right. It suggests the report must have shown inflation easing, or maybe the numbers were just better than expected. Either way, it calmed investors down a bit.
Let's hope that trend continues. Now, a really important one for families, a baby food recall at Target.
Yes, this was reported by the Associated Press Business News. It's serious potential lead contamination in some Target brand baby food.
Oh, that's scary.
Absolutely. Critical for parents to check any Target baby food they might have against the recall notices. Really highlights the need for strict safety checks.
Definitely vital information. Okay, on a much lighter note, SCA, the singer, launching a lip gloss line.
Yeah, UPROXX mentioned it. It's cruelty-free, and she's doing it as a pop-up thing on her tour with Kendrick Lamar.
Smart marketing.
Yes.
And cruelty-free taps into that ethical consumer trend, too.
Exactly. Big platform, direct access to fans, plus hitting those ethical notes. It's a powerful mix.
Makes sense. Okay, tech again. Shopsense AI. Forbes says they're scaling up solutions for broadcasters. What does that mean for us watching TV?
It suggests we might see even more integration between watching something and buying something. Like you see an item on a show, and Shopsense AI's tech lets the broadcaster make it instantly buyable right there on screen.
Ah, the seamless see it, buy it future.
Pretty much. Could really change how we interact with media and shop.
Interesting. Now, Public Opinion, the Toronto Sun, ran an editorial suggesting people are skeptical about Carney's new carbon tax.
Right. Editorials have a viewpoint, of course, but it reflects concerns. You often hear worries about the cost to individuals, to businesses, and, questions about how effective these taxes actually are versus the economic impact.
Yeah, the ongoing debate around climate policy, it's complex.
Always.
Forbes also had some practical advice suggesting people might want to buy certain things now before potential tariffs hit.
Yeah, basically a heads up. Tariffs are taxes on imports, so things like electronics, clothes, maybe furniture, anything largely imported could get more expensive if new tariffs come in. So maybe buy that big-ticket imported item sooner rather than later.
Good practical tip. And still on finance, CBS News found that most Americans don't actually know their own tax rate or who pays the most taxes.
Yeah, it's quite surprising, isn't it?
So?
Suggests a bit of a gap in basic financial literacy about how the tax system works.
Which probably affects how people view tax policy discussions, too.
Likely does, yeah. Makes informed debate harder.
Okay, a health item that's been buzzing a bit, Ozempic feet. The London Evening Standard mentioned this.
Right. It refers to some foot-related side effects people have reported while using the weight loss drug Ozempic. The details weren't extensive in the report we saw, but it's a reminder that medications, especially newer ones, can have unexpected side effects. Something to be aware of.
Always good to know the potential downsides. Now, for travelers, especially vegan ones, The Age clarified something about airline meals.
Basically, while airlines offer standard special meals like vegan or vegetarian, they don't generally cater to just being a fussy eater.
Right. So if you have very specific dislikes beyond a standard dietary category,
you probably need to bring your own snacks. Don't count on the airline for super specific preferences.
Good travel reality check. Okay, back to global trade, Taiwan, and semiconductors. Reuters says Taiwan's planning to simulate the impact of potential U.S. tariffs.
Yes, which makes sense given how dominant Taiwan is in semiconductor manufacturing.
Absolutely crucial part of the tech supply chain.
Totally. So any disruption from tariffs could cause major ripples, higher prices, supply issues for electronics worldwide. They're clearly taking the possibilities seriously.
A space to watch for sure. And finally, Forbes again, talking about retailers using data insights.
Right. It's all about harnessing that customer data. Retailers have tons of it now. And the ones who can analyze it properly can understand what customers want, personalize offers, and basically stay ahead of the game. Data is the key differentiator now.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot of ground there. From like AI saving elephants to the nitty-gritty of net metering and tax rates. If you had to pull out, say, 3 big takeaways from all this news.
Okay, 3 things. First, I think, is just how deeply tech like AI is weaving itself into everything, even areas like wildlife conservation. That's a clear trend.
Right. Unexpected places.
Second, you really see the constant push and pull between public opinion, health or science advice, and government policy, like with the measles discussion or the carbon tax skepticism. That dynamic is always there.
Yeah, that interplay.
And third, personal finance is just incredibly dynamic right now, isn't it? You've got inflation pressures, new tech like buy now, pay later, changing habits, market reactions to economic news. It's constantly shifting.
Those are great summaries. So thinking about our listeners now, how does this stuff actually connect to their lives?
Well, think about it, right? This AI trend. How might that change the products you buy? or even how you think about issues like conservation, or the policy debates, like the carbon tax. Does that reflect how you feel about economic impacts versus environmental goals? And financially, with inflation, tariffs, new payment options, are you thinking about how that affects your budget, your spending choices?
Yeah, and even the food stuff, the vegan recipes, the baby food recall, it makes you think about transparency and safety, doesn't it? What you prioritize when you shop.
Exactly. These are all real-world touch points.
Loads to chew on there. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We sifted through that batch of news from consumers.app dated April 15th, 2025, covered quite the range.
It really was a diverse mix, showing just how many different forces shape our consumer world.
So here's a final thought. Looking at everything we've touched on AI's expanding role, economic shifts, changing consumer values, tech disruptions, what single thing, just one, do you think will most significantly change your daily life as a consumer over the next year or so? And maybe more importantly, why do you think that? Something to ponder.